are off and running. Brent, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Sean. How about you?
Not too bad.
Good.
As we record this sometime in early December, actually, it's Pearl Harbor Day. It's December 7th.
All right.
So it's kind of fitting we are having this conversation, and we'll explain why in just a second. But Brent, thank you very much for being a guest on Did You Know That? Question mark. And I want to thank everybody who's tuning in. If you're a regular subscriber, I greatly appreciate that you're dedicating some of your time to my passion project. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button with the bell so you get notified of future episodes, which come out every Thursday. And hopefully you go back and check out and give us a like on some of our previous conversations. For those of you who don't know me or don't remember who I am, my name's Sean O'Rourke, and Did You Know That is a interview channel where I get to talk to interesting people about interesting and sometimes annoying topics of conversation. And when I'm not doing this, I'm a cyber liability for an insurance brokerage in New York City. And Brent, why don't you tell the fine folks who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am the clinical director at the Veterans Clinic at the University of Missouri School of Law. So at what we call Mizzou Law, we have a clinic that is manned with two attorneys and then with law students that represents veterans in cases before the VA and what are known as discharge upgrade cases. So we that's the kind of the big picture of what I do.
Yep. And that's why it's fitting that we're talking on December 7th, because your life is around veterans, but you also have a background in the military. So why don't you tell folks quickly your background outside of being a legal eagle?
Sure. So, I come from a military family. My grandfather was a Marine Corps officer who served, retired from the Marines, served in World War II in the Pacific. My father was a Marine, only for one tour, but and then he became a basketball coach. And then when I was in law school, I was trying to decide what I really wanted to do as a lawyer. And I had a job with a law firm, which I did for a little bit, but I really was waiting for my commission to come through in the Navy JAG Corps. And so in late 1988, early 1989, I started on active duty in the Navy as a lawyer. I served for 30 years total, 15 years on active duty, and then 15 years in the reserve. So that was kind of broken up between times on active duty and times in the reserve. But I retired from that in early 2019, although I took the job at the Veterans Clinic at Mizzou in 2018. And so I had a fascinating career. I did so many interesting things. I thought it was really very, very cool. And I never regretted for a second that I was in the military or any of that. And so it was a great experience for me.
So we're going to get into the serious topic at hand of what the Veterans Clinic does and what have you. But first, let's get some of the lighthearted items out of the way. How is your life different as a JAG attorney than it was on the TV show JAG?
So it was funny when I was on active duty. For example, I had a tour on an aircraft carrier, and I remember. And then later on, I was in the Pentagon, other places where I was around a lot of line officers and people who'd done really very serious and dangerous things. But I always reminded them that, one, we had a movie, A Few Good Men, which was like one of the most famous movies ever. And then we had a TV series, and they didn't have either. So they hated that because, one, how people generally look at lawyers and how they make jokes about it. But so it was very different than the TV series. But I did do some really, I thought, very cool things. For example, being on a carrier as a lawyer on board, dealing with all the mean, it's like a little city floating around. So you have to deal with all those issues and international law issues and all that. And then I taught at the Naval Academy, which was a great job as well. And then I spent most of my time, this was like the TV series. I spent a good deal of my time as a defense counsel representing sailors and Marines. And that's really where I got my passion for now helping veterans, because representing those sailors and Marines, sometimes accused of not very serious things, but sometimes accused of very, very serious things. I really just love defending them because one, they had all made a decision that they were going to do something important, and they had something going on in their life where they really needed help from a legal standpoint. And so I was really happy to do that. And they were usually often very interesting cases where you had a good defense, you had a good client. And so I really, really enjoyed that. And that's really spilled over now into helping veterans, because to me, it's so much the same thing, where somebody who served has an issue they're trying to figure out and they need help with, and you're trying to serve them as their attorney. And that gives me a lot of pleasure.
Well, you have the Veterans Clinic itself. For those of you who are tuning in and may not know, I have a very personal connection to it because my late father-in-law is connected to it. He had to go through a Veterans Affairs issue, and when we told your group how quickly he got it resolved, you were sort of surprised and a bit flabbergasted that it went that quickly. But my late father-in-law was also a judge and a lawyer himself. So he kind of knew how the process worked. But you're representing those who don't have that kind of background and that kind of experience. So why don't you tell the folks on a little bit more detailed level what the Veterans Clinic does do for your clients, essentially?
Right. So, people hear about the VA and they will think, about the hospitals and the healthcare that's provided. We don't really get involved in it. I mean, I'm a disabled veteran myself. I get my healthcare from the local VA hospital for a lot of things, and in my experience, it's been a good experience. I've gotten good healthcare, and it's been a positive thing. What we do is we represent veterans who have been injured while they're on active duty, or they have some condition that resulted from their active duty period, and they have filed or they're seeking disability compensation. So they can't work, or they can't work as much as they would be able to if they didn't have this disability. So we represent them in that, usually in the appeals process for those claims. And often for those veterans, it is their lifeline to be able to have a life, to be able to have any money, to be able to function. And then also, and this is an area which I just think is so important. And like, if Americans knew about it, knew more about it, I think it would be a bigger issue. But there are tens of thousands of military members who've been discharged with less than honorable discharges. So they end up with this negative piece of paper about their life in the military, which is very hard to come back from in terms of getting a job and all kinds of things. But it also makes them totally ineligible for any VA benefits. So they can't get health care. They can't get any compensation if they have PTSD or traumatic brain injury or whatever it is.
Sure.
And so we do that. We represent them in that process as well. And that's a real passion of mine. I really just think it's an area that needs a lot more focus. And since I came to the clinic, we really have just developed a much more aggressive practice in discharge upgrades.
Well, and then for those of you tuning in as we're recording this, we're going to put links to videos of clients of the clinics and people who have successfully appealed to the VA on a variety of topics or issues. And I'm going to post the videos or the links to the videos down in the notes section. So be sure to check those out after you finish this one. But the first time I visited you at the clinic, you showed us a presentation and you showed us a PowerPoint slide. I believe that was made by the VA that showed the average time for a claim to be settled. And I don't want to give away the punchline because I was shocked by the number. So can you tell the folks watching this what the average claim window is for a veteran?
Right. Yeah, it is. It does have quite a punchline. You're right, Sean. So on average, it is about 7 years for a veteran when they file for a disability. If they have to appeal it and
Right.
get it finally resolved, it is about a 7-year process on average, which means some are much shorter, but of course some are even longer than that.
Right.
So it is an incredibly complicated process. I mean, you can't even explain. I couldn't explain it to people in a way where they wouldn't just like either fall asleep or their eyes would glaze over because they would have no idea what I was talking about. And you would think that for veterans, the process would be simple. Like, this is how it works. This is what you do. And then here's the decision, but it's not that way at all. And also for veterans, because of their military experiences, this is my view of it, they are often very willing to accept that this is the answer. They served in the military. They were like, this is the way it is. Okay, I'm going to soldier up. I'm going to whatever it is, and carry on. And they're willing to accept those decisions when the Supreme Court in a case found that in almost 80% cases, 79% of cases, there is an error in the initial decision by the VA on those disability compensation cases. So, and then they fall into that very, very complicated process that takes years and years. So that is pretty astounding.
I mean, it blew my mind that it would happen. And then obviously I revert back to my cynical nature and I realized, well, this is a government bureaucracy. So I really shouldn't be surprised. I should be more disheartened by the fact that it does take that. And it takes an organization like yours to help these veterans who have, for the most part of their career, have said, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and carried on with their orders, to realize that, well, there is another avenue. You don't have to accept it as it is. So before we get into how the process works and how you find your clients and what have you, can you give us a little bit of background about the clinic, how it was started, what you've done up to this point?
Sure. So the clinic is a really, really cool thing. And your family's been involved, and it's been really tremendously helpful to have families like yours that support the clinic. But so the clinic started in 2014 with the founder. Her name is Angela Drake. So Angela and I are the two attorneys who run the clinic. Her father was a paratrooper in Vietnam, was killed in Vietnam. And so she went to school on the GI Bill, and she had been a very successful lawyer in the Midwest, and she had begun teaching at the law school. And a couple of her students who were veterans came to her and said, we think that Mizzou should start a veterans clinic. And she didn't really know what that was, but once she started looking into it and the need for assistance for veterans in these two areas, it was like a light went off in her head, and it's really become her passion for this clinic. And so how it works is each semester we have a clinic, and it's really a class for the students. We have up to 14, 15, 16 students a semester in the clinic, and they work on these cases under the supervision of Angela and myself. And so it started in 2014 as nothing, and now we have a fall, spring, and summer session with students representing veterans in those two areas on an ongoing basis. So that's kind of the big picture for what the clinic does and what the students do. I mean, on a level of what it does for the students, I mean, for a student to see them at the beginning of the semester and how timid and reluctant they are, because this is their first real client they've ever had. And it's a veteran who often can be very straightforward and sometimes gruff about things, although very appreciative, but there's no messing around with
Sure.
what they're talking about.
Yeah.
To go from how they view it at the beginning to now, like we just finished the semester this week, where they are interviewing clients, they're talking with the witnesses, they're preparing all the briefs, they're doing all these things. So they get that experience of having real clients, which is amazing. I mean, it's just amazing that they get that experience. Plus, to me, this is such an important thing, is they learn about the military. I mean, they learn about what it means to have served, like what was Desert Shield, Desert Storm about? What was the Korean War about? What happened in Vietnam? What's Agent Orange? All those things. They get to learn that and appreciate it. And I just think it makes them better lawyers. It makes them better people. And it's overall just a really positive experience for them.
Yeah, and it's an amazing, it's amazing to think about that they get this practical knowledge on a situation that for some of these veterans is life or death, because without it, they're going to be destitute. Without it, they may not get the care that they need. And so do you find that the students, I know you said that they're semesters, do you find that the students want to continue to participate, or are they only by semester basis? And then once that semester ends, they have to move on. They can't participate any longer.
Well, so we have a saying that once in the clinic, always in the clinic, so, which is true.
Yeah.
And many of them continue to work in the clinic throughout their time in law school after they get done. We have some who will go on and practice in the area of veterans law, which is a whole area of law that exists. So, for example, one of the current students right now just applied for a clerkship to work for one of the national organizations that represents veterans, and also applied for a permanent position when she graduates to be an attorney in that organization. So we have many who continue on and help veterans, or they will take cases, we'll refer cases to them on a pro bono basis, because it's a great way to do their pro bono work, and they know it, they know the law, and so that continues on. So that's one of the great things about it as well.
So these, just to give people context, when you say that you refer them clients on a pro bono basis, basically they've passed the bar, they're a practicing lawyer, but these are clients that the clinic maybe aren't taking on.
Right.
And you're going to refer them to the lawyer who may be able to help them.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so that's a great point of clarification, but it also points out one of the big issues, which is there's so many veterans who need assistance that we are always at capacity or near capacity. And so we're looking for ways to still be able to have the veteran represented, but when we can't take the case because we're just overwhelmed with the number of veterans who need assistance. So we have a whole process of training lawyers throughout the state of Missouri on how to represent veterans, and then referring cases to them to meet the needs of veterans. But it still is an overwhelming number of veterans who need help.
So let's talk about that. One, how many veterans do you think are or should have appeals processes in place? And again, you might be just guessing at that number. And then the second question is, how does the clinic determine which veterans you're going to take on their cases as opposed to referring it out?
Right. So the VA, like in the last few years, there were times when there were several 100,000 cases pending in the VA appellate appeal process, multiple hundreds of thousands of cases that were pending. The VA in the last couple of years has undergone and hired more staff and more administrative law judges to take on these cases or to review the cases. And so they've cut into that, but it is still always hundreds of thousands of these cases which are pending at any given time. And the reason that's the case is because of the initial decisions being so problematic if they were done correctly initially, then there wouldn't be this, huge number of appeals.
Right.
There would be a much smaller number, but that's what creates that large number of appeals that are out there. And so how we decide on what cases to take is one, just quite honestly, is are we overloaded so we just can't take any more cases? And that happens at different times because there's only 2 attorneys and you have to, make sure you're properly supervising the cases. And when you take on a disability compensation case with the VA, it's not like a 6-month proposition. It is a multi-year proposition in terms of
obviously, yeah.
So then on whether we decide to refer them out or not is if there are attorneys out there who are capable and willing to take cases, that's always a factor. And that's really basically it. I will say on the discharge upgrade side of cases, we're much more, at least I'm much more apt to take the case because, quite honestly, Sean, I like the cases. I like doing them. I think they're important, and they aren't as overwhelming in terms of just them being ongoing. You're usually preparing one thing, maybe an appeal, but that's it. And so, but that's kind of our decision-making process.
So I want to go back to something that you said on your first answer, in that the original decision is what proves to be problematic and leads to the appeals.
Right.
Why is that? Who's making the decision that makes it problematic?
Yeah, so there are adjudicators at the regional office levels that make those decisions about initial disability claims. And I can't tell you why there are mistakes made. There would be the things that you would naturally assume, which would be that you have maybe adjudicators who are inexperienced, who have too many cases to deal with, or there could be other reasons as well. I'm not really sure exactly, but let me give you an example of how it works.
Yeah,
and then you can maybe think, well, okay, this is why decisions are made. So I just had a veteran. So one of the sad numbers on these cases, in the disability cases, is 14% or so of veterans will die while their cases are pending with the VA. So I had a case just recently where it was a Vietnam veteran. He was an Army officer, had served honorably in Vietnam, had been exposed to Agent Orange, and then later on in life developed a type of cancer that is closely associated with Agent Orange exposure. And he had other conditions which were the result of that because of the treatment and all that sort of thing. And so we took the case, and although this is somewhat rare, but we still do it. We took the case and we filed the initial claim, and it's a pretty straightforward case. We at least I thought it was a pretty straightforward case. The veteran has served in Vietnam, no question about it, has this type of cancer, and then has these residual conditions because of it. Well, we file and we get the initial decision, and it is extremely low in terms of the disability rating. He can't work. He's in a facility. He is, really having a difficult time in terms of just even functioning. But the ratings were, basically like 20% disabled. And so then we have to begin the appeal process. So then we start filing medical records and other things showing that his disability rating was just wrong. If you look at the VA's own examination of the veteran, he should have been at a much, much higher disability rating. But it was just flat out wrong. And so then we begin the appeal process. So it goes on, we file the appeal, and then they want to re-examine him, but he has a stroke, so he can't go to the examination, and then they want more records, and it goes on and on and on. And this all began about 2 years ago, and he passed away last week. And he doesn't have a surviving spouse. And so it ends up where the case just dies. And so the the VA, in a sense, doesn't have to pay any of that money to the veteran, which he was entitled to because of this delay that just went on and on. And so that was really disheartening. And telling the family member, telling the daughter, I'm sorry that there's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
That he's passed away and the case is over. To me, it's personally embarrassing. I just hate it because it's embarrassing. I feel like in some ways, being in the military myself, that there should be more that I could have done for the family. But that was just the nature of that case.
Well, then you said you mentioned that his disability rating was 20%. So I take it that means that the VA determined he was 20% disabled. Is that how that sort of translate? Did they give a reasoning behind that number?
Yes, they gave you a written reasoning, and but it didn't make any sense. It was just wrong. I mean, it was he could not function because of he had these neuropathies that occurred because of the treatment for the cancer, and he was immobile, unable to function, unable to work, but they wouldn't find him to be unemployable. They wouldn't find him to be much higher disabled. I mean, it was just these things and the VA, the sad part about it is the VA's, their basic tenet in terms of how they're supposed to function is to be on behalf of the veteran. That's like written into the rules, that they're, service on behalf of a grateful nation. They have a duty to assist the veterans. The benefit of the doubt is supposed to go to the veteran. But that's not what happens, Sean. That's just not what happens. And so you have these long fights that end up in really sad situations.
So people who are watching this broadcast know that I'm an openly avowed cynic. And so I have to ask, do you think some of these decisions are on purpose?
So I can't, I'm not inside the VA, so I don't know how it works. But if I'm looking on the outside, here's what I'm thinking. If I were a cynic like you, here's what I'm thinking.
Please don't be. One of us has got to be positive.
Which is, so it's like this. So it's like, okay, here's an elderly gentleman who has cancer, who has lots of problems in terms of his residuals or the effects of the cancer. And if a decision awarding him disability compensation at a higher level is awarded to him, is delayed, then for a period of time, the chances that he is going to pass away like he did are pretty good. So among the veterans, the saying that they use is deny, deny, deny until you die. So that's what happens. How that happens exactly, I can't say. I wouldn't want to say something that I don't know to be true, but that's what it looks like from the outside.
Has anybody conducted studies on sort of the decisions that the VA makes initially in terms of trying to determine if there's a rhyme or reason or if it's just sort of ad hoc?
Yeah, there have been studies done about, they've had inspections done in terms of their decision-making process. And that's how, for example, how that 79% number or percentage came out in terms of errors in the initial decisions was a view of that. So it does appear to me to be, it is very uneven. Sometimes you get decisions which are pretty fast and they're right, and it's great. It's really great for the veteran. And other times you get decisions which just don't make any sense at all. And then you have to fight to try and get the right decision for the veteran. And so there does not seem to me to be a lot of consistency in terms of how the decisions are made. And we've had cases, great successes in some cases, in many cases with the VA where they did reach the right decision. Often that's because you present overwhelming evidence. You maybe have an
Right.
expert witness, a doctor who comes in and says, this particular veteran has this condition. It was caused by his service, doing this or that, or occurred while he was in service. And that can really carry the day also. But
Well, that was my father-in-law's experience. I mean, my father-in-law served 39 years, retired a two-star general, was a judge and a prosecutor in the state of Missouri. And when he filed his initial disability claim, his cancer was throat cancer, and he filed it under Agent Orange exposure because he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and he was denied. Well, you don't deny Roger Combs anything and not expect a fight,
Right.
and a very well thought out, planned fight. And what he did is he went and he investigated, and he found, I think it was 3 other helicopter pilots that served in the same area around the same time who had exactly the same cancer, I should say, throat cancer, the exact same. So there were 4 of them. And what he did is he took that to the VA, and his claim was settled in 3.5 years. But what he also did was he then laid the groundwork for the other 3 helicopter pilots who then went and filed themselves using Roger as the standard. And I do believe, and I can't confirm this, but I do believe all 3 of them received some sort of benefit and compensation because of it. But I mean, that took somebody of Roger's experience, expertise, and stick-to-itiveness to get it done. I got to imagine some of the soldiers that you're meeting were not officers. They went into the military because that's kind of what they did. And now that they're out, they're not necessarily aware of their options. So my question for you is how are you making veterans aware that there are options out there for them?
So we do it in a lot of different ways, but you are absolutely right that if you don't have, so we often have medical doctors and mental health experts who we take cases to, and we get expert opinions that really are the key factor in the veteran getting their condition service connected. Mm-hmm. So like Roger was able to do that because he was a highly intelligent person who had the resources and the willingness to do it.
And the know-how. I mean,
he
was a lawyer and a judge, so he knew how to work the system, the legal system.
Right. So very, very few veterans would have any of that knowledge. So anyway, so how we do it is we have events all over the state of Missouri where we've before COVID, we would go out to the different parts of the state and hold events that would be advertised. We work with the university's extension office, which they have in every county. There's an extension office, and so we would go to all over the state, and it would be advertised that we're coming to the Northwest or this particular county. And then now we still do the same thing, but we do it all by Zoom, where we meet with veterans, and that word goes out into those areas that they can come and talk to us. That's been one of the biggest ways that we've gotten the word out about what we do and how we help veterans. We also have a national symposium every year that we just did it on October 30th, where we address important issues in veterans law. We bring in speakers, either judges on the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, or we brought in generals and admirals and all kinds of interesting people, POWs, to talk about different issues in veterans law. So that gets the word out a lot also, because it's a very highly advertised event, and we have several hundred people who attend that. And then also, and then word just gets out. I mean,
sure,
we get, particularly among the veteran community, this veteran talks to this veteran, or the VFW in Oregon, Missouri talks about it, and then people begin contacting us, and so we get inquiries and requests for assistance on a daily basis from veterans, not only in Missouri but throughout the country.
Well, that was going to be my next question. You're not confined to the borders of Missouri.
That's right.
You will take on veterans when you can anywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have clients from all over the country, and we do have a little bit more focus on Missouri with this kind of rural program that we have, because it's part of the extension program for the university. But and that is one area that I really have a passion for also, is rural veterans and their need for help. We recognize that, and we really created the model that is we were the first one to do it in the country, a model of going out to these rural areas and letting them know, and then meeting with the veterans in their communities to talk about their cases, to see what issues they have, and to do that because they often just don't have access because of computer, lack of internet access. Sure. Or they're just out there doing their thing out in the rural areas and don't get as much information. So that's been a big focus of the clinic since I got there.
So I pseudo know the answer to this, but I'm going to let you educate myself and the viewers. Is the University of Missouri Law School the only one with a veterans clinic, or are other law schools sort of endeavoring to do what you guys are doing?
So there are several other law schools that have veterans clinics. And so when Angela first started this in 2014, there really weren't very many, but it has really grown in the last few years, where there are a number. I don't know the exact number, but it's over 40, I think, probably now.
Okay.
And they do, all of them are like ours and not as big as ours in terms of the number of clients and that sort of thing. But it's really grown because, it's just it makes sense, because you have this great opportunity to help veterans, and then the law students get this great experience. So It's a very easy fit for the law schools. And so it really has grown. And there's some amazing veterans clinics in the country that do tremendous work. So like, for example, on the East Coast, Syracuse has a really aggressive veterans clinic that does great work. And then Yale has a veterans clinic, and as does Harvard. Yale is really unique because they have really focused a lot on discharge upgrades. I don't know if you saw this or not, but so for the Army and the Navy Marine Corps, there were class actions that were certified by a judge in Connecticut because there were so many cases that were just languishing, 20,000 or more cases that were just either had been decided and the rules had not been applied properly by the boards deciding that, or they just were languishing and no decisions were being made. And so the district court judge, the federal district court judge in Connecticut, certified a class action for the Army, and they just settled that case. The Army did, and where they're going to go back now and automatically review cases for veterans, really post 9/11 veterans who served in Afghanistan and Iraq,
Gotcha.
who are claiming that they had mental health issues, either PTSD or traumatic brain injury, or were the victim of sexual assault or sexual harassment. Those cases, which there are just, like I said, thousands and thousands of those cases with these soldiers who had negative discharges, the Army is going to go back and automatically review those cases now and apply their own policies in the way that they're supposed to be applied. So that was a big victory for veterans from the Army. The Navy and Marine Corps case is still pending, but Yale was the one who really pushed that forward.
That's fantastic.
No, it's a great decision, and it shows you when you start putting pressure on bureaucracies, how they can ultimately, well, they will just give you they will just give you the Heisman forever and ever. But then once you like get to some point, they will cave.
Right.
And that's happened with the VA too.
You're getting close to being a cynic. You are getting close. I see the signs. I see the signs, Brent. Be careful.
I'll have to think about that. But I would say that if you work in this area of the law for any time at all, you could easily become a cynic.
Yeah. Actually, the day we're recording this, we're 3 days out from an episode going live where I talked to a lawyer who represents survivors of sexual violence, both men and women. And again, it's one of those dark places of humanity that you're really surprised that this woman is so level and so positive, that it's one of her gifts, is that she can deal with this on a day-to-day basis and not become me, for lack of a better term, and look at the world at a very skewed sense. She's very positive, very upbeat, and so it was a very interesting conversation. Nothing like SVU. And which leads me to my next question. I'm a big fan of the TV show SEAL Team on CBS.
Right.
And during one of their seasons, they did, I thought, for a fictionalized account of the SEAL teams, they did a whole series of episodes on exactly what we're talking about. They weren't talking about in terms of not getting the benefits from the VA, but a former soldier not getting the mental treatment or the benefits. Actually, it was about the benefits, because what they did not diagnose him with was traumatic brain injury while he was in service. And so they weren't certifying him or giving him the help that he needed. And I thought it did a very good job. Once I started learning about the Veterans Clinic, I was like, wow, somebody knew what they were talking about when they wrote those episodes.
Right.
And I'm wondering, how many of your cases are about PTSD, traumatic brain injury, versus those very identifiable physical ailments?
Right.
So lost limbs, cancers, or what have you.
Right. So I would say, so on the disability cases, I would think, and then this is just, I would guess, I would say about at least half our cases are on mental health, have mental health issues. And then on the discharge upgrade cases, which are often so tied into the disability cases as well, I think about 80% of our cases are mental health cases, where, I mean, it becomes, so I'll give you a percentage. So when I was talking about those discharge upgrades in the Army and that class action, there was a period of time, like after 2009 to 2015, that the Army was discharging soldiers at an incredibly high rate, and the number of those with negative discharges, and the number, the percentage of those soldiers was upwards of 65% had PTSD symptoms that were identified even before they were discharged. And so when you're having those problems, then you get into that, minor misconduct, you get into fights, you smoke pot, whatever it is, you disobey orders. And then you get this administrative discharge, which isn't like going to a court martial. It wasn't that serious, but you're just getting the boot. And if you're a special operator and you live that life, I mean, I have several cases like this. You live this life of, putting your life on the line. It's high intensity. It's dangerous. You're doing things which no one else can understand. They can't even begin to understand what you do. And then it's all of a sudden you go from being somebody who you're part of a team, and you think so much of what you're doing yourself, and all of a sudden the military says to you, sorry, we just think you're a dirtbag now. We don't care about all the stuff you did. And that is just, it crushes them. And so that's a big problem. That is not, the ramifications of that are going to be seen over the next couple of decades, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think part of the problem is, especially with mental health, as much as people are trying to make it a more common conversation, the fact that you can't see the injury and you can't appreciate what's going on inside somebody else's head versus they're missing a hand, they're burned, they have cancer. You can identify with any of the physical. It's those invisible ailments that I think really make it difficult. And so I mean, organizations like yours and the other law schools, I think, are imperative and will become imperative to try to help the veterans as we go forward. And I want to be respectful of your time because I do know that you are an avid tennis player and you have 45 courts at your availability. So I'm sure you're itching to get changed. Though you might have your tennis shorts on below the Zoom camera. So
you never know.
You don't. You don't know what I'm wearing below the sweater. So let's leave it at that.
So full disclosure, I've already played today. So like life is good. I mean, like I can just yabber on forever.
We could talk all day then.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But I want to close it out with two more questions.
Sure.
One, what is your current number of cases, and what really is your sort of your max that your group can handle at any one time?
Right. So so currently, and there are a lot, they're in just different stages of the process. So we carry at any given time about 150 clients. And some have, like I have, so right now it's Christmas break for us, or at least since we don't have a final, we've already started our break with the students. But that entire time, to me, it's just time that I can work on cases to get them done and out the door. So about 150 cases at any given time is what we carry. And that is really for two attorneys, you're thinking 75 cases each. That's at the outer limits of what we can handle. So we are stretched pretty thin. But we will continue to operate at that level. We just, it's tough to.
So before I ask the last question, actually, I meant to ask this earlier, and I stopped looking at my list as we started chatting and getting into it. How are you guys financed?
It's a great question. So we are financed solely by what we call soft money. So we don't get any money from the state. We don't get any money, any dollars from the university. The law school does provide us with a very nice space in the law school and provides us with administrative support. But in terms of salaries and other costs, we do it based on raising money. So that is a big part of my job is raising money. So I guess in some ways I'm fortunate because my father later on in his life became a fundraiser. And so we always said, Filberts are really great at raising money for other people. So not for ourselves. And so, but that's a big part of what we do.
Sure.
It probably takes about 30% of my time and Angela's time is fundraising. So,
well, when you started, correct me if I'm wrong, when we first met, you weren't getting paid.
I was getting paid.
I believe you were getting lunch, right? And that's what they were doing. They were buying you lunch.
It was pretty minimal. It was pretty minimal. And it's gotten better. And the position has become a permanent position in the law school. My position has. But so you're not in this to become rich. That's for sure. But I mean, we really, I mean, our goal is to have funding. So there is no question about the permanency of the clinic and it can function. And also, Sean, we need, and this is just me talking because we're talking about what the clinic will be like and what it should be in the future, is we need to be able to hire more attorneys so we don't have to turn away veterans. That's our primary goal long term, is to never turn away another veteran in terms of taking on cases. And so we're going to continue working to try and raise funds to do that.
Well, I'm going to put the link to donate down there because anybody can. I know my wife and I do so on an annual basis. I know they've
Right.
set up an endowment there. So this is something close to our heart. So my final question is, let's say there is a veteran out there who happens to see this, or somebody who cares about them happens to see this. How can they get in touch with you to find out whether or not their case is workable, worthwhile, something to review, something that you may be able to refer out to an attorney?
Sure. One, they can go to the University of Missouri Law School website. You just put in Mizzou Law online, and then there is a link for our clinic, and you can.
Which I will put in the episode notes.
And I always do this, Sean. I mean, I think the staff thinks I shouldn't do this, but I'll give you my email address, which is my last name, Filbert, Filbert, B, Brent's my first name, at missouri.edu. And people can email me with questions or inquiries or whatever it is they have. And I'm always happy to respond, and I respond very quickly. So that's another way as well.
That is a fantastic way to close it out. It's a generous offer, and I sincerely hope anybody who's watching this who may be in a position or knows somebody who may be in a position to certainly take the steps, because without actually taking that first step, nothing's going to happen. And you don't necessarily have to say accept no as the answer. So, Brent, this was fantastic. I told you time was going to fly by. We went, I think, well beyond 45 minutes. I have no idea until the video renders how long we went, but we could keep going because I do have other questions. So we may do this on a semi-regular basis so we can have updates from you on how
Sure.
the clinic's doing. But I greatly appreciate it. All the best to you and yours. I hope you don't get tennis elbow by playing too much. But I sincerely hope you enjoy the holidays and the family and whatnot.
I appreciate that. And thanks to your family for all your great support. It really means the world to us in many different ways, not just financially. Your involvement. So.
We thoroughly enjoy it. And this will be promoted as soon as I have it slotted on the schedule. I will let you know. But again, for Brent Filbert, my name is Sean O'Rourke. You've been watching Did You Know That? ? Thanks very much for doing so. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe and hit the little bell so that you'll get notified when future episodes will go up. Again, every Thursday morning, we will have a new one there. So for Brent and myself, everybody take care, and we will talk to you soon.